What happens when the affection and desire for intimacy of one partner in the marriage are rejected by the other? This is something we cannot overlook because the feelings of shame, resentment, frustration that arise can slowly or quickly ruin a marriage. My letter today is from someone I'm calling Aarti, and my comments here are not a replacement for couples or individual therapy, but I'll be going through her letter and then sharing some ideas. Aarti writes, Dear Yash, my husband and I have been married for the last 3 years, following 11 months of a courtship period. The issue is we haven't had sex yet because my husband keeps finding excuses not to. The first time we held hands, he told me my hands were sweaty. Similarly, when we kissed, he was like, What's that smell? It made me very conscious of oral hygiene, and I try not to sit with my face towards him. Over time, we cuddle while sleeping, but that's the only physical contact we have. When I hug him, he keeps finding excuses like we need to go to the store or something else. I feel rejected. It's not like I have a high sex drive. I don't. But I do want to frequently hug, kiss, hold hands, and I want more intimacy than I'm getting. When I bring this up, my husband brings up the fact that a lot has improved. Example, the cuddles in this aspect. But I feel like the pace at which things are changing is really slow. At the same time, I don't want to pressure him. My love language is words of affirmation. And every time I told him something with love, he would say, These are just words. Now I've stopped saying anything and I feel like I'm falling out of any affection I had for him. I'm also beginning to resent him. I understand that he grew up in a typical household where parents are respectful towards each other but not lovey dovey, but that's not the kind of marriage I want. How do I fix things? And that's Aarti. So, Aarti, first of all, I want to say that the first couple of lines of your letter had me saying, ouch to myself. That's got to hurt. I felt for you when you described reaching out for affection and then hearing about your sweaty hands, or when reaching for a kiss, what's that smell, and then being conscious about turning your face towards him after that. Now, without knowing anything else about what's going on between the two of you, I do know that when we reach out to another with interest and excitement and joy, and it's not received in a similar way, the one thing that we do experience as a feeling is shame, and that can be very, very painful. Especially in an area like sex and physical intimacy, it involves us making ourselves really vulnerable. We're literally and figuratively exposing ourselves to another. So when you describe things the way you have, it says a lot. And the first thing I'm going to say is that I really feel for you. It's got to hurt. And these are also early experiences for you in the relationship, and they've clearly stayed with you. So these memories seem very vivid. And these feelings and memories cannot be pushed away. They have to be talked about, processed, made meaning of, and healed. Okay. Now, you say you haven't had sex in 3 years, and that's a pretty long time not to have sex, especially when a partner is desirous of it. So, I believe there's no normal or right amount of sex, first of all. Um, Partners can decide not to have sex at all. But when one partner does want it, and then there's no sex at all, it can lead to a lot of resentment and frustration, maybe even loneliness and confusion for you. So, the fact that your desire for intimacy isn't being fulfilled, I'm validating that this is a problem, it is hurting you, and it's therefore a problem for your couple system as well. So, it is important to address. See, now desire discrepancy often comes up as a problem when it comes to sexual health in a marriage. And what's happening between the two of you seems quite extreme because we're not talking only about frequency. We're also talking about the fact that you haven't had sex at all. I'm not sure this is really being acknowledged as a serious issue between the two of you. You say that when you bring it up, he talks about how things like cuddling have improved. So that looks like a defensive reframe. It looks like a dismissive response. And I'm imagining that when that dismissal comes on top of the shame you're probably already feeling, your response would be to actually go silent. But this is something you probably need to reverse and quickly because you're also recognizing the loss of affection and the fact that you're becoming resentful. So the quieter you get at this point, the easier it is to pretend that the problem doesn't exist, but it's really going to prove corrosive for your marriage in the medium and long term. This sort of resentment and pretense can really, really hurt a marriage and even lead to its ruin. I'll talk a bit more about that. But I'm also going to wonder out loud about his avoidance and these early signals that he sent you. I'm wondering, is it possible that there's some shame, some fear, some lack of confidence that he feels about sex? And instead of acknowledging that, it's in a way projected onto you. Those feelings are passed on to you by making you feel uncertain and shamed. It's not done consciously, but it's a common psychological defense. When we don't acknowledge our own feelings and accept them, we often pass them on to others in our lives, especially our partners. So it's important to see if this is what might be happening. And for that, you need a space where he can be vulnerable and reflective instead of dismissive and defensive. So it does look like a job for couples therapy. Now, you also mentioned something about how his parents were respectful but not lovey dovey. Sure, and it's a fact that a lot of the messages that we get about things like sex or just about anything are shaped by the verbal and non verbal messages from our parents in our growing up years. And it looks like there could be something about the expression of emotion and affection, because you say even your words of love are rejected, and he says these are just words. So there could be something in his family history about how affection was received or maybe even shut down. And so it would be helpful to examine your history, his history, how all of this came about in terms of what your beliefs and desires are when it comes to sex and intimacy, and what do you want in the relationship now. Now, the cost of ignoring these things can actually be very severe, because when one partner feels rejected and resentful silence sets in, it's a precursor to something called the distance and isolation cascade. And this is a term by Dr. John Gottman, who says this is one of the things that really leads to the ruin of a marriage. And signs include hopelessness, loneliness, solo problem solving, leading parallel lives. And it's really hurtful to the marriage. Also, when a partner is feeling unloved and unseen and intimacy is an issue, it's ripe grounds for the possibility of an affair occurring, which is destructive in its own way. So I don't know enough about his issues to comment on what these challenges are here, but it sounds like there's a lot that the two of you aren't actually saying to each other. And frankness and authenticity is what you need right now. It's also not possible to separate sexual and emotional intimacy, so we don't know what's happening on that front. And it's often a self reinforcing negative loop. When emotional intimacy is an issue, sexual intimacy is an issue, and vice versa too. So at this point, it looks like it's really important for you to slow down, identify the loop that you may already be in, and it does sound like you're in that, and find ways to break out. See, the good thing is that you're relatively early in your marriage. You have a whole lifetime ahead of you. So when you say you want to fix this, I want to say it may not be an easy or short-term fix, but the courage to speak up. Ideally, to go to couples therapy and talk about it slowly and decide how you want your marriage to be. What are your present issues? How did it get this way? And can you partner to actually unlock intimacy between the two of you? What would that look like? Or does it mean looking at other creative solutions? I don't know. That's something that only the two of you, maybe with your therapist, can decide. But it does look like waiting isn't a good idea at this point. So, what I'm saying is that at this point, it looks like you really do need to take some action. And it could also mean individual therapy for you to get clear about what your wishes are, what your desires are, and to process your feelings. And I'm only going to say that when you find an individual therapist, if you choose to go that route, find someone who can be empathetic towards you, but also keeps your overall couple system in mind, because there is another person involved. Now, I hope I've been able to convey to you that your feelings are valid, your desires are valid, and I really feel for you. And I hope that you're able to find the courage and the vulnerability required to actually speak up about this issue and not back down. It is important, and it's important to address right now. And I wish you all the best in that journey.